I am Isaac Newton, born on Christmas Day, 1642, in Woolsthorpe, a small village in Lincolnshire, England. I arrived into the world prematurely and frail, a tiny infant who wasn't expected to survive long. My father, also named Isaac Newton, had passed away 3 months before my birth, and my mother, Hannah, was left a widow at a young age. When I was 3 years old, she remarried, leaving me in the care of my grandmother while she went to live with her new husband. This event shaped my early years. I felt abandoned and withdrawn, and this sense of detachment remained a theme throughout much of my life. From a young age, I was drawn to solitude and reflection, preferring to spend time alone rather than in the company of others. I was not a particularly strong student in my early years, nor was I considered especially gifted. At the King's School in Grantham, I spent more time building mechanical devices, windmills, and water clocks than paying attention to my lessons. My curiosity for how things worked often led me away from the school curriculum. It was during this time that I began to develop a fascination with mathematics and mechanics. By the age of 17, my mother, having become widowed again, returned home and attempted to pull me out of school so that I could manage our family farm. However, farming was not where my interests lay. I was ill-suited to such practical matters, and my mind constantly wandered toward the deeper mysteries of the natural world. Recognizing my intellectual potential, my uncle intervened, persuading my mother to allow me to return to my studies. Soon after, I was sent to the University of Cambridge, where my real intellectual journey began. At Cambridge's Trinity College, I immersed myself in the works of classical philosophers and mathematicians, Euclid, Aristotle, and, perhaps most importantly, René Descartes. Yet, while their works formed the foundation of knowledge in many subjects, I saw that there were gaps, questions that had not yet been fully answered. I became particularly fascinated by the work of Galileo Galilei and Johannes Kepler, both of whom had begun to unravel the laws of motion and planetary orbits. These thinkers ignited in me a burning desire to understand the forces governing not just the Earth, but the entire cosmos. My studies were interrupted in 1665 when the Great Plague forced the university to close. I returned to my childhood home in Woolsthorpe, where I was left in isolation for nearly 2 years. This period of solitude proved to be one of the most productive in my life, what I later called my annus mirabilis, or Year of Wonders. During these years of quiet reflection, without the distractions of university life, I made my most significant discoveries. It was then that I developed the foundations of what would later be known as calculus. Although I referred to it as the method of flux science, calculus was the mathematical framework I needed to explain changes in motion, rates of growth, and the behavior of objects over time. I did not seek recognition for this discovery at the time, and it would take many years before the full significance of this contribution was realized. In fact, it wasn't until later that a bitter dispute arose between me and the German mathematician Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz over who had truly invented calculus. Both of us had developed it independently, but the rivalry became a point of contention, consuming much energy and time. It was also during my time at Woolsthorpe that I began to ponder the nature of light. Through a series of experiments, I discovered that white light is not pure, as had been commonly believed, but a mixture of different colors. I passed a beam of sunlight through a prism and saw it split into a spectrum of colors: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. This discovery was groundbreaking. It overturned the long-held belief that light was homogeneous and indivisible. I demonstrated that each color of light had a unique refractive index, proving that light was made up of different components. I later published these findings in my work Optics in 1704, forever changing our understanding of light and vision. Yet, perhaps the most famous story from my time in Woolsthorpe is that of the apple. I often sat in the garden pondering the forces of nature. One day, I witnessed an apple fall from a tree, and though this event was ordinary, it sparked an extraordinary question. Why does the apple fall to the ground? What force draws it down? Could that same force extend beyond the apple, to the moon, and even the planets? This question led me to the formulation of my theory of universal gravitation. I realized that the same force that caused the apple to fall, gravity, was also responsible for the motion of celestial bodies. Gravity, I hypothesized, was a force that acted between all objects with mass, pulling them toward each other. Its strength diminished with distance, following the inverse square law. After years of refining this idea, I formulated Newton's law of universal gravitation, which states that every particle of matter in the universe attracts every other particle with a force proportional to the product of their masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. My work on gravitation culminated in my magnum opus, Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica, or simply the Principia, published in 1687. This work laid out the three laws of motion. 1. First law, law of inertia: an object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion remains in motion with the same speed and in the same direction unless acted upon by an external force. 2. Second law, law of force and acceleration: the acceleration of an object is directly proportional to the force acting on it and inversely proportional to its mass. F equals ma. 3. Third law, action and reaction: for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. The Principia provided a comprehensive framework for understanding the physical universe. It explained the motion of planets, the behavior of tides, and the trajectory of projectiles. My three laws of motion, combined with the law of universal gravitation, unified the heavens and the earth under a single set of physical principles. What Galileo and Kepler had begun, I completed. Following the publication of the Principia, I achieved widespread recognition throughout Europe. I became a Fellow of the Royal Society and eventually its president, a position I held for nearly 2 decades. In 1696, I was appointed Warden of the Royal Mint, where I oversaw the nation's coinage, combating widespread counterfeiting and reforming England's monetary system. My work there, though lesser known, was of great national importance. Despite the success of my ideas, my personal life remained somewhat solitary. I never married and maintained few close friendships. The rivalry with Leibniz over the invention of calculus was one of many intellectual disputes I found myself entangled in. I was often protective of my work, and my desire for control over my discoveries sometimes alienated others in the scientific community. In particular, I found myself at odds with Robert Hooke, a fellow member of the Royal Society, over his criticisms of my ideas in optics. In addition to my scientific work, I was deeply interested in alchemy and theology, though these pursuits were kept largely private. I believed that the physical world was a manifestation of a deeper, divine order, and I spent many years studying ancient texts in search of hidden knowledge. I was a devout Christian, though my beliefs were somewhat unconventional. I rejected the doctrine of the Trinity, which was a controversial stance for my time. My religious convictions often intersected with my scientific inquiries, and I believed that by understanding the natural world, I could come closer to understanding the mind of God. In my later years, I became increasingly focused on theology and biblical prophecy, although these studies never achieved the same level of recognition as my scientific contributions. I remained committed to the pursuit of knowledge until my death in 1727. Looking back on my life, I cannot help but reflect on the enormity of the discoveries I made. From my work on calculus and optics to my formulation of the laws of motion and gravitation, my contributions have reshaped humanity's understanding of the universe. My name has become synonymous with the very principles that govern the physical world, yet I have always viewed myself humbly. As I once said, I do not know what I may appear to the world, but to myself, I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore and diverting myself now and then in finding a smoother pebble or a prettier shell than ordinary, whilst the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me. I am Isaac Newton, and though my time on earth has ended, my ideas endure. Through them, I have sought to reveal the hidden forces of nature, and in doing so, I hope I have moved humanity one step closer to the truth.